have the College of Science presenting on disciplinary UDL development supported by cross-disciplinary collaboration. Our faculty partners from the College of Science are Dr. Anthony Cronin, Dr. Jennifer Mitchell and Dr. Gavin Stewart.
Okay, thank you all. First thing I'd like to do is just to acknowledge and pay thanks to Julie, Lisa and Daniel, who first of all applied for the funding and got this whole program going. I think it's the best thing I've been involved with in UCD in my 20 years of teaching here. And I just think the collegiality from Daniel and Lisa and Julie again in terms of responding to all our needs in terms of emails, and I think setting up the little chat within the Google thing has been priceless, because we all hate traipsing through emails to try and find something, but there's a little chat facility that we've been using, and all the contributors from the faculty partners have been excellent, and that's where I'm getting all my ideas from anyway. So I just want to say thanks to you guys for that. So Hilary is at a wedding in very hot Spain, so we'll have to excuse her. So I'm Anthony Cronin from the School of Mathematics and Statistics, and forward is, where do I point it? Oh, sorry, yeah. So when this partnership kicked off, I was the only College of Science faculty partner, so I should have moved to health. I see you had 8 there in health. So I was on my lonesome for the first 6 months or so, and I think it was Kevin maybe from Social Sciences had the idea that I would partner up with the College of Social Sciences and Law. So that was with Kevin, Muireann and Ernesto in terms of the facilitation. I think that worked really well. I saw you earlier, I can't see you now. I think that was really good, and I look forward to working with you again towards the next semester. And then in terms of the digital badge myself, I took with Barbara, who's here in the front row, and we had a poet, I think, from English, and we had someone from business, and we had John Healy, who was talking about the circuit diagrams, and I'm forgetting somebody. But I think everybody who's taken the digital badge, the number one piece of feedback is that kind of richness of diversity of learning from other people in the university and across colleges and across schools. Because I'm from the School of Maths and Stats, we tend to think in a particular way, and if I broaden that out to the College of Science, it's not terribly different in terms of that thinking, so meeting people from law and social sciences has really been a great eye-opener. So in terms of UDL then, so I've been tinkering with this for a couple of years, I guess, so I'm probably a bit cheating. I've taken a few T&L modules as well. So I'm always fascinated by students learning from students, and that's probably from my work as the Maths Support Centre manager here at UCD. So peer learning and peer assessment and peer feedback was my idea here. And the problem, to give it some context, is the module I teach for second years is Linear Algebra 2 for the mathematical sciences. So these are students who will go on to get degrees in mathematics. And, you know, it's the first time they're really going to meet proof or be expected to produce their own proof. So they've seen proof at school, they've seen it in first year, but they struggle to produce their own proofs. This is not about learning it off. It's the first time they really have to get down and deep into it. And they struggle with it. It's abstract, it's formal, it's proof-based, it's theoretical, and they struggle to make connections with other mathematics courses that they've taken, even Linear Algebra 1. And that's not a UCD problem, it's not an Irish problem, it's a worldwide problem that if you ask any of my mathematics colleagues, they'll say linear algebra is a tough course and they struggled with it, and we know that's a good thing, but students can see that as them failing and whatever. So I use this software that UCD were implementing on a pilot, Peer Scholar, and you don't need the software, as Tom said earlier on. You can do these things without software, without technology. That's just a facilitator, but it was handy for grading. So Peer Scholar then, there's 3 phases. You've got create, assess, and reflect. So create was the students trying to do a proof, so a short proof. And then I got them into groups, and they could, a bit like the last speaker, they could choose their own group, or I could randomly assign them to groups, but there was no individuals. I did want this to be a group thing. Then they would be given 2 proofs. So the idea is, I don't know if you've heard of comparative judgment. So if I give you an object and ask you to estimate the weight of it, that's cognitively more difficult than if I give you 2 different objects and ask you to determine which is the heavier, which is the lighter. So the idea here was I put up 2 proofs from students. So these are genuine students' proofs from either the previous year or this year, and they can choose that, whether they want to look at genuinely their peers from this year or last year's group, and that's a choice they have. And they just look at these pairs of proofs and they have to decide which is better, and then they have to go in deeper. Why is it better? Was it the notation? Was it the logic? Was there a flaw? If there's something wrong with it, what it is? And they can cycle through up to a minimum of 3 pairs of proofs, and then better students will maybe go on, you can look at 10 pairs of proofs. So eventually you get saturation and you get the idea. But the students, in terms of feedback then, it was the group work that really worked, because students get very bogged down in starting proofs, and that's really the hardest thing, is to get started. So I can see from correcting the exams that they're not perfect proofs, so we don't expect them to have perfect proofs, but they're getting definitely better at starting the proofs. So I think if we think about it, we're probably hitting a lot of the UDL principles there, with the expression and the representation. And my time is up, so I'm going to stop.
Okay. So I only have one slide. It seems like I didn't do any work at all. But what I wanted to talk about was my 2 attempts at doing the UDL badge first, and then everything else I've done. So I did this originally as part of the curriculum design module, and Lisa was teaching on that. And it was during the lockdown. It was all completely online. And I was minding a 3-year-old on top of everything else, because my partner is a teacher. We were both working very hard during that time. And I had intended to complete the UDL badge as part of the assessment for that, but it never happened in the end because it was just too much. It was mental at the time. So when this opportunity came around to do this fellowship and engage with everybody across the university in a much more integrated way, I took it again, obviously because it came with a bit of funding. But what really struck me about this approach was the opportunity to talk to peers about the process. Because before I'd been doing it on my own, I was like, maybe it's the right thing, but I didn't really have the forum to talk to anybody else, because everybody was scattered across the country and possibly other countries. So I was lucky enough, I think, to be in science, because Anthony partnered with Ernesto and Kevin and Murren. And it is literally the best thing I've ever done, like Anthony said, the whole time I've been here. And I don't know if Vikram's still here. Possibly not. But I brought back to the first time I came here, the day after the bridge in Malahide fell down while I was watching it. So I thought it was funny that the story comes around full circle. But what was brilliant about the approach of talking to colleagues in different colleges and different schools was the different perspectives they brought and the different approaches they had to teaching and dealing with universal design and bringing learners of different backgrounds and different strategies in to be assessed in diverse ways. So I was working with a lecturer from education, one from philosophy, and a tutor from maths. And everybody had different approaches, but they were all brilliant. And Lisa, the girl from philosophy, was talking about podcasts as a way to assess the students' learning, and it was brilliant. Like, I basically have pinched all their ideas and will be incorporating them into my modules moving forward. And I think that's what's great about this whole thing, is that you can talk to other people, especially today. Some of the approaches are outstanding. But what you can learn from other people in a forum like this, and I hope this happens every year, like this type of conference, because it's brilliant. And how we can use these different approaches and bring them into science, because the way of thinking in science is very logic-based, very evidence-based. Philosophy and education is very thought-based, approach-based, feedback-based. So all of these different strategies improve our teaching and the students' learning and our assessment of the students' assimilation of the knowledge. So it was incredible working with all of these different people and the different approaches. What I did for my badge this time, 2 minutes ago, okay. The first time I did it and I didn't do the badge, I changed the assessment. We had multiple choice questions in a fully online module before the lockdown happened. And it was terrible. It was a level 4 module and it wasn't really assessing their assimilation of the knowledge. So I got them to draw a diagram and explain the science behind what was going on in the diagram. It went down really, really well. So much so that our external examiner commented on it and brought it back to Birmingham as an alternative way of teaching. So the things that you guys do and make us do are having a ripple effect across the world. So this time, I'm getting accredited for it with the badge. I changed the same module and looked at the feedback that the students were giving me, and a lot of it was pinch points, stress about not knowing how they were being assessed, how this related back to the learning outcomes. And so I put on tutorials, put up rubrics on how the figure was being assessed, and model answers for the structure of answers. And a lot of it was to do with I wrote it down, setting their expectations, because once you set their expectations, it removes a lot of the stress, especially for students from different backgrounds. I myself am a first-generation academic, which I never thought of until I actually taught for years here, where it's a huge amount of stress on some people where they didn't come in thinking, this is where I'm meant to be. I luckily had a mother who was like, you're going to college, but not everybody has that. So I do have a background where I came out of nowhere to come here. And one thing going forward, I'm going to be the new head of microbiology at UCD. I say that because I'm saying it to everybody at conferences now. You're all at UCD, it doesn't matter. But I'm going to, and I've already told my colleagues that I'm going to push for them all to do this, and that it's really important to do it, because I'm getting pushback based on the huge workload they have at the moment. Where are we going to get the time to do this? This should be done for us. But just picking one example, biology is hugely dependent on diagrams for explaining the concepts. If you don't put in alt text when students are reviewing your slides, they will not remember what you intend for them to learn from the diagrams. And on a very basic level, once you start putting in stuff like that and improving your ally scores, like our colleagues in architecture and engineering said, you're going to lose all those students who need that broad encompassing net to pull everybody in for their learning. That's it. I'll stop waffling now. Thanks very much.
This is forward. That's back page and just thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Gavin and I'm a lecturer in comparative animal physiology. And over the next few minutes, I just want to give my viewpoint on the benefits of this faculty partnership programme from a personal level and how I think it's making a difference already. A bit of background of the project that I did for my UDL badge, my digital badge, and it was called Considerate Slides, a small step in the right direction. And what I wanted to achieve is this kind of +1 idea of simply doing something that I'd wanted to do for about 5 years, which was to improve the accessibility of some slides, in particular on 2 early stage modules, the animal biology first year module and the principles of zoology module. So in combination, there's about 450 students on these 2 modules. Through various reasons, for time, etc., I hadn't been able to do this, and this was an opportunity to go through this checklist of things that I needed to change from the format I'd used for the previous 10 years, ever since I started back in 2008 at UCD. So I basically followed the checklist for all the slides on these lectures, changing the font away from my pet favourite of Comic Sans to something more favourable, should we say, for many students, removing italics and underlining using bold text. I've put the next one in red because I have a real problem with this, reducing text on each slide and using a 24-point minimum. So this is an example of the slides I was trying to change, having too much text on. Using an off-cream background, using images more, layouts, using colours and symbols like a green tick versus a red cross, and really ensuring contrast, because I like to use colours, but quite often, as I found out, the contrast maybe wasn't as good as it couldn't. Now, this may not be something that would impact every student, but there will at least be a large cohort, hopefully, within these 2 modules, which would be improved. So the first result was that using the Ally tool, I achieved a perfect percentage of 100 on 19 lectures, and not the last one. I think this reveals my kind of personality is a little bit too obsessive. So my take home from today is you don't need perfection, or alternatively, every symposium should have ice cream. That's the other one. I still can't tell you why the last lecture wasn't 100% because I spent hours trying to figure it out, but never mind. So the slide on the left-hand side here has the traditional slides that I've used for many years, which is a white background, Comic Sans, and on the right-hand side I just changed it, like the slides I'm presenting today. This takes time, especially if you're a bit obsessive. So I calculated somewhere between an hour to 90 minutes for each set of lecture slides. That's 30 hours work to do this. On top of that, doing the digital badge, there's things to learn about in terms of the theory, there's things to learn about in terms of interactions with other people on the group and learning lots of things. So this is a considerable amount of work. What I really want to say today, though, is that I think there's impact on these kind of programs. Undergraduate students, I'll find out hopefully in the next month when we get all the online feedback about the questions that we asked about the slides, whether they did actually help some of them. Using the funding from this program, I was able to employ a graduate student from our zoology program, a first-class student, who could help me with lots of lab teaching, of undergraduate projects, of master's projects, and this really saved me some time. This is where I got the time that I needed to do the badge. So that was the kind of element for myself in terms of the practicality. I wouldn't have been able to do this without the funding on this program. There's also a philosophical part of this, which is this is the sort of program I've argued for in our school and in a college for years and years, saying if you want people to do extra stuff that they need to be doing, you have to help them in some way. And I think this is an exemplary example of where third-level education currently fails, and it doesn't give enough funding for these kind of projects. I think going forward, hopefully, the undergrads will get a lot from this, or at least some of them will. I think the graduate student has a 6-month part-time contract of paid employment on their CV, which is very beneficial, and also learnt some extra skills. And I, for one, have got renewed hope in terms of where we're heading, because I think this is how we can do things. And as a take-home message, I've been at UCD for 14 years, and 4 years of that was as head of teaching and learning. Mirroring what my colleagues from science said, this is probably the best thing I've been involved in, because it allows you to do the things that you want to do. As a head of teaching and learning, what I found was I would go to meetings like this, lots of symposiums, and you see the same 10 to 20% of colleagues. This is the biggest challenge that we face. It's not the people in the room or the people online that are joining us that we really need to reach. It's the other people. I love education, but I also love research. Every opportunity I'll talk about urea transporters if I can, so I've managed to squeeze it in. This is the type of funding that allows me to do both of my passions, and this is what we should do in the future. Thank you very much.